This is a tutorial for making providers for the Lookup plugin for Talespire. The Lookup plugin, as the name suggests, allows you to look up various things directly from the Talespire chat. You do a search from the chat and the results are placed back in the chat. Now, the Lookup plugin comes with a provider for getting spell information from D&D Beyond. And now we're going to make a provider for getting monster information. Now, unfortunately, we can't use the D&D website for monster information because the URL for each monster lookup contains a unique numeric identifier for the monster, and therefore it's not predictable. If I want to search for zombie, I have no idea what that unique number needs to be in the URL in order to query for zombie. So instead, we're going to use the Roll20. Roll20 seems to have a pretty predictable URL. It basically is roll20.net, compendium DND5E, and then the monster name, hashtag content. And we get a result like this. So now we want to get this data, all of it or some of it, and be able to present it in the Talespire chat. So that is the objective of this provider. It's going to go to Roll20 as the source, and it's going to be designed to get monster information. Okay, so how do we make a provider? A provider is basically a text file. So let's open up a text editor. I'm going to use Notepad++, but you use whatever you want. Okay. And the provider has three components. The first component must always start with the keyword URL in capital letters, be followed by a space, and then we're going to provide the URL for our source. So in this case, Roll20. So I'm going to go back to Roll20. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to our provider, paste that in. Now, obviously, if we left it like this, every time we would do a search, we would get skeletons because the URL says skeleton. So to get around that, the plugin uses a brace bracket keyword of search. So when the plugin reads this URL, it will replace search with the brace brackets around it with whatever the keyword that the user provided to actually do the lookup. So that is going to then allow this URL to be used for all kinds of monsters. Now, the next line is always the keyword space, followed by colon, followed by a space, and then one or more characters. What this is used for is typically when you have a keyword that is more than one word, like ogre zombie, for example. The websites don't like spaces. In normal URL, the space will get replaced by a ampered character replacement, but a lot of websites replace it with something else. For example, D&D Beyond replaces spaces with a dash. I haven't done the homework here yet to see what Roll20 uses. I'm not going to waste time doing that right now. You can do that. So for now, I'm just going to say that it's the same as Roll20. It will put a dash there. It's something that we can verify later, but let's move on. So those are the first two lines of a provider are basically non-JavaScript function. They're two reserved lines that are read ahead, and then the rest of the content is regular JavaScript. If you want to do this sort of from first principles, use your own JavaScript functions, then the content of the website comes in a variable called content. And at the end of the function, you need to return a string, which is what is then going to be displayed in chat. That string can have color formatting and other formatting, anything that the chat supports in terms of HTML formatting, you can have in that string. But to make things easier for those of us who are not that familiar with JavaScript, the plugin provides a bunch of helper functions which can be used to significantly simplify the getting of or the creation of the provider. All right, but in really both cases, it is a two-step process. The first step, we basically need to see what information is coming from the website to determine how to parse out the data that we are interested in. And then the second part is actually writing the sequences to extract the data. So in the first pass, what we're going to do is we're just going to have a single line here. No, 2 lines. We're going to have a start, and then we're going to have return content. Start is a helper function that is provided by the plugin, and what it does is it basically sets the process of extraction to the beginning. So basically, it starts with the entire content of the website. The reason why that's provided is we will see that in a little moment. We have helper functions which help narrow down the section of the website that we were looking for to extract our data from, and that process basically cuts down the website content. So every time you want to extract another piece of data, you issue the start to basically reset the whole data to basically search the whole site again. And in this particular case, we're going to return content. As I mentioned, content is a variable that's created automatically, and that holds the content of that whole website. So here, all we're doing is basically saying return the whole website that we just looked up. Okay, we're going to use that to find what tags we need to actually extract our data. So now that we've got this provider, I'm going to save it. And we want to save it in the install plugin folder under custom data and providers. So I'm going to save that. Just grabbing that folder. Okay, so I'm in the Lookup Plugin, custom data, providers, and I'm going to save it, let's say, as test, and it needs to have a JavaScript extension. Okay, so now we are ready to do phase 1, and that is to extract the page contents so that we can look for our tags. Okay, so in order to do that, we are going to open up a command window and navigate to the Lookup plugin. So I have done that here. I have I have Explorer here open. I've navigated to the plugin folder where you will find a file called lookupengine.exe. I'm going to just open up a command prompt there. So now I'm in that location. Okay, and what we're going to do is we are going to run lookupengine.exe and then use our keyword, let's say skeleton. And we can see that it looked up that that keyword using the URL that we provided. We got some results back, and there was the results were way past our window here. So we're going to repeat that, but now we're going to push the results out to a file. I'm going to call it search. Okay, and now you can see that created, instead of displaying it on the screen, it created a search.txt file. I'm going to open that up in Notepad, and that's basically the web page. So this page that we see here is generated by this code here. Okay. Don't worry if you do not understand this, that's okay. All we need to do is we're going to try to look for keywords that will help us extract the data that we want. So I'm going to go back to this page and I'm going to see if I can find some of these keywords. So first thing, probably we want to extract the name. Okay, so I'm going to look where in this code I can find that name. So if I look for skeleton, and I can go looking, I can see that skeleton shows up in a lot of places. So I want to try to pick a place that is likely to be fairly easy to extract, because basically what we need to do at this point is we need to tell the provider, how do I get to the piece of data that we're extracting? Okay, so I can see that the first time skeleton shows up is it's in the title. This is actually the title bar of the website, but I mean, it's as good a place as any to extract that name. This is also good because it's nicely at the beginning of the page, so it's unlikely that the title shows up earlier on in the page, so it's probably a good source. So we want to tell the provider to go to the first occurrence of title, and then we want to extract everything after that up to a pipe character. Okay, no problem. We go back to our provider that we wrote earlier. Now we're going to get rid of this return content. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable for holding our results. We're going to have lots of things that we're going to get from this monster, and we need to return one big long string at the end of this for display in chat. So I'm going to create a variable called result, initialize it to nothing, and now we can start. So we're issuing our start to go to the beginning of the whole page content. And now we're going to use one of our helper functions, which is find section. Okay. Find section basically cuts off content until the keyword that you have specified here. And as we said earlier, we are looking for title. So I'm going to put title here, and I've intentionally left out the ending greater than sign, because next we're going to do result equals result. We want to add to our result string get between, and now I'm going to say we want to get the results between that greater than sign and the pipe sign. And we're probably going to want to put the next content on the next line. So we're going to put a next line carriage return and next line. These are the escape characters for it. Okay, so that should have extracted our name. Now what we can do is, to be consistent with our with the spell lookup, which colorizes the name yellow, we can actually provide some HTML codes in there for color yellow, and let's say color gray. These are not necessary. I'm just demonstrating here that you can use formatting, HTML formatting in the chat. It doesn't support everything, but it does support a lot, including colors. So if you want to colorize your output, you can do that. Okay, so that should have extracted the name. So now we probably want to get, If we were, again, doing this completely, we'd probably want to get this information here. I'm just going to skip that. I'm going to go straight on to armor class. So I want to try to find armor class. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to search. Okay, so there's armor class, but doesn't look like it's too useful because it's got some escape characters here, and then it looks like AC is just kind of shown as, I don't know, a placeholder or something like that. So not useful. We're not seeing a number here. Okay, so I'm going to continue searching, and apparently that's the only occurrence. That's bad news for us, but it's not hopeless. I'm going to try, since there's some kind of a AC placeholder here, I'm going to try searching for that. I mean, I could go manually through this. We can see that there's, for example, wisdom and vulnerabilities. So probably if I actually scroll up here, we can see some roles, immunities, intelligence, hit points here. So if I keep scrolling, oh, okay. So yes, if I had searched for AC, I would have found it. So here's our armor class information. So now we need to, again, find this uniquely. If I do a search for something like this, it's obviously not unique. We can see that it shows up below here, and it may show up before this. So we need something a little bit more unique. I think this right here will do it. So we're just going to go back to our thing, our provider. We're going to go say start so that it, again, searches the whole website from the beginning. We're going to say find section. And we're going to grab that. Now, be careful here. There is a quote here, so we have to escape those. But otherwise, okay, we find that section. Now, we want to, once we found that section, that's going to narrow it down to this area. And then we want to look for this. And again, I'm going to do the trick to not do the end greater than sign. So we're going to then continue the search for the next one. Again, we have to escape these. So in our first case, we only needed to do one section search to narrow it down. Here, to narrow it down, we need to do two. It doesn't matter. You can do how many you need to narrow it down to the section that you need. And we're going to, again, do results here. And probably do something like AC. Put a prefix there in our output. Again, we're going to get between that, but this time our value is, so we have a couple of options. If we go from the greater than sign to the less than sign, we're going to get the armor class number plus any comments that come along with it. If we want just the number, we could go from the greater than sign to a space. In this case, I think I would like notes with it, so I'm going to go with that. And I don't think we need any coloring here, so we can just go with the new line. Okay, so now this starts at the beginning, goes to title, picks up the name, starts over, goes to this, then to that, then extracts the AC, and we can continue to do that for other specs like hit points. I saw those earlier, so I'll just grab that right here. So it looks like a very similar situation. We can again look for this section first and then that section. So that's pretty well a copy and paste from here. And again, this part here, I'm just adding this as like hard-coded text so that when we display the results, there'll be a header indicating what it is. But you can format the results whatever way you see fit. So you could get rid of this. You could write out armor class. This is just text that I'm inserting into the result in front of the data that we've extracted just to give it some context. Okay, so that's really it. Oh, sorry. And the other thing we need to change here is now we've made what we want to return in our variable result. So now we're not going to change we're not going to return content anymore. That's the full web page. We want to just return result. Now, obviously, I've done armor class and hit points in the name. You'd probably want to go and extract more of this information, but the process is exactly the same. The important thing to keep in mind is when you're creating a provider, the pages need to be consistent. These tags that we're looking for need to be there for every monster that you look up. So for example, if we were looking for AC and some monster didn't have it, that's a find section would fail. This would find the next one, which might be something completely different, and then the results would be God knows what. So it's important that these headers that you're searching for are consistently there. So what that, for example, means is if I was doing a complete version of this character, you don't want to search for something like short sword, because if you do, another character is not going to have a short sword and it's going to fail. So for things like that, you probably want to try searching for maybe melee weapon. But the character may not have a melee weapon. So you might want to just search for actions and get everything within the actions and display that. How you handle that, that's completely up to you. It's JavaScript, so you aren't stuck with only these helpers. These helpers are there to make manipulation of the content easier, but you can break out to any of the regular JavaScript functions or anything like that to extract your data. And that's about it. So let's see if this lookup works. So we're going to first test it outside of Talespire, and then we can test it inside Talespire. So I'm going to save this. I think we called it test. The name doesn't really matter, just as long as it's got the JS extension and is placed in custom data providers. Needs to be there because that's where the lookup engine looks for it. So let's give it a try. I'm going to go back to our command prompt that we had opened earlier, and we're going to try our search again. This time we're going to just display it to the screen. And now, because our provider is no longer returning back the website, it's returning back the data that we've extracted. Hopefully, we'll see a HTML formatted response. And there we go. There's our colorization for the keyword skeleton, and armor class 13, hit points 13. Let's verify that it works with other stuff. So let's go about zombie. Zombie. Name returned, correct. Zombies have a really low armor class of 8, and they have 22 hit points. So our search provider does seem to be working for various monsters that are available on Roll20. Now, if we go to Talespire, we should be able to issue the lookup command. Once again, you can go to the Lookup Plugin documentation to see the details, but it's basically in chat you can type /lu for lookup, put a space, and then you put your keyword that you want to search, like skeleton or zombies, and it should basically execute this, what we did here manually, and the plugin, it should then push that into the chat so you get the result right in Talespire. And that's about it.